Hello everybody, welcome to the 1.0 exploration series. Today we're going to be looking at Liurnia at the Lakes, the entirety of it more or less, with very few exceptions just because we would need quest lines to continue them, so I'll come back to those later, which was greatly helped due to a new development. Before I started working on this video, I knew that the Elden Ring guide was going to be released, the volume 1 at least, so I actually decided to wait until I got that to be able to cross-reference things more easily while looking for items that might just not exist. So instead of checking anything I suspect is difference later on when I'm playing through in the later patches, I can just check immediately on the book and see if there's any item that is missing or different immediately. Which in a way does make the process longer, but it does make it more efficient to get footage later on as well. So this will be a massive help for the rest of the series going forward. And I may even, for the eventually compiled version of the video with all the parts together, I might even fill in some of the gaps of items that I didn't know were there and such, by going back to the areas I've already done before I got the guide. And lo and behold, this book's actually partly written by a couple friends of mine. Charly Beat Me, Gun Destiny, and Half Damage. I was already gonna get this book because I like collecting these future press guides, but it definitely made me even more eager to get it. If you've gotten the guide and liked the content in it, all three of them do stream with variants between them. And Charly has a YouTube channel as well, so if you'd like to sub to her or follow them, I'll leave links below. But yeah, let's begin. The first merchant you're likely to encounter in Liurnia, at the very bottom of the map basically, is actually not there. He's instead a little bit deeper into the map in the lake in the Scenic Isle, Grace. And I normally mention merchants as stock later on, but I actually want to point out that the Zweihander is here. As we discussed in previous parts, the strength weapons are like almost non-existent in a lot of places. They've removed a lot of classic ones, but the Zweihander is here at the very least. The Adon Thief of Fire boss here doesn't use the Flame of the Fell God until phase 2, quote unquote, which is after he uses this one flask healing. I did try to bait it for a long time before phase 2 to get him to use it, but he didn't, so I hit him a little bit to see if he did anything, and yeah. And speaking of which, the flame is called Soul of Flame in 1.0 instead of Flame of the Fell God. Jump into the Stillwater Cave. The Sage set is not where it normally is. It's normally in this little lake of poison, and it's not there in 1.0, which is unfortunate because it is a pretty cool robe at least. Apparently you can farm the Mushroom Crown here from these enemies here, which is normally a set loot you can get in the world later on in the game. And it's called a Towering Mushroom Head instead of the Mushroom Crown as well. That's pretty interesting. In the Laskia Ruins, there's supposed to be a ritual pot in this area right here, but it's replaced by a golden rune. And if you go a little bit deeper into it, ironically enough, you can find a ritual pot where the Wraithing Calling Bell is supposed to be. But it's actually called a Ceremonial Pot in 1.0. So a bunch of weird changes. We have discussed this Wraith Calling Bell being different because we did get an item that's called that already, but it's actually the Spirit Calling Bell. So, in the Lakeside Crystal Cave, there's a chest that normally holds the Spear Talisman, but it's not there in 1.0. As per usual, a lot of these chests just seem to be straight up empty. And a little bit further ahead, when you actually leave the dungeon to the place with the Alboneric lady, the Slumbery Wolf's Shack is now called the Wolf Slumber Shack, which is close enough, just switching around words. In the Purified Ruins, where you normally find a 2-finger heirloom, you will instead find the Faithful Canvas Talisman, which is ironic because we realized in the last part in Caelid that the Faithful Canvas Talisman is not where it's supposed to be. And it wasn't replaced by anything, it just wasn't there, even though there's a corpse still there. So this is where it turned out to be. Now we just have to find the 2-finger heirloom. In the Cliff Bottom Catacombs, the door for that catacombs is already open when I got there, and I'm pretty positive I've never came to this area. It's not even a catacomb I tend to frequent at all. So that definitely caught me off guard. A little deeper into the catacombs, the place where the scythe is supposed to be doesn't have a scythe, has a random rune. So that's another main weapon kind of just gone. The wonderful carving is also missing from here, and so are the page ashes in this chest right here. So this one is definitely a catacomb that was stripped of a lot of its valuable items. I'm happy to announce that if you do the hiatus questline, she still will puke. These fire monks here have the normal-ish flame color for their attacks. And that made me think that maybe the black flame one we found in the previous part, maybe they just had the color the same because they forgot to change it or something. Because these enemies seem to be reskins more or less, these fire monks. In the Carian Study Hall, the normal state of it at least, we're not going to get to the inverted one today. In the last phase of following this stupid bow wizard guy, he seems vastly more annoying if you can believe it. He teleports a lot more than I think even at launch. Like in current patch wasn't that bad when I was trying him for this video, but he was excessively teleporty when I was trying to get him down. Maybe I remember how bad it really was at launch. I do remember being annoying as well, but this seems excessive. And also the magic downpour spell that it normally drops is named Rain of Shards in 1.0. These old archers seem to become passive once you got close to them. In current patch, they will switch to a melee weapon whenever you get close enough and stop shooting. But these ones seem to just kind of stop. It's really weird behavior, but I don't know. Maybe they just didn't have those programmed correctly, or I don't know. Right here in this area, you're normally supposed to find the Stalwart Horn Charm, which is the one that increases bleed and frost resistance. But it's not here in 1.0, so that feels like definitely a big hit. Perhaps it's elsewhere, but we'll have to find it if it is. Okay, now there's something I must confess. I have not noted the archery avatars at all in this series because I have not noticed anything different. The drops that it has, the boss fight, everything seemed pretty much similar to me and haven't made note of them. But apparently, they've always had the dragon theme playing instead of their normal soundtrack. But I did check a few other ones and even went back to some of the previous ones I fought already for the series, and they all had the dragon theme. I don't know what happened. I think I just had a brain fart and thought they're playing the normal song, but no, it's a dragon theme. So apologies for that, I suppose, but we did eventually address it. But yes, it seems the archery avatars and the Peach avatars all have the dragon theme playing instead of their normal archery avatar song. This one's a little disappointing. These balloons you can shoot down that normally drop golden runes with their little marionette enemies just drop glintstone fireflies. Like every single one I popped seemed to just drop this. So these were easy ways to make some golden runes, so that's definitely just a joke. Did you all know that lobsters jump in this game? This is not a 1.0 thing, this is just the thing that they do, but I did not know that until making this video, and it really scared me. This one is very interesting. Whenever you're talking to Raya and you get the Volcano Manor invitation normally, you actually get an entirely different item, which I assume will do the same thing. I will check the questline later. But you get this item called the Red Insignia, and the little illustration of it is also just like, I've never seen this in this game. I don't know what this asset is. I don't know. And I even looked it up on Google to see if the Red Insignia is a thing that's in like ever in the game, but no, it doesn't seem so. So unless it's named different, I've never seen this. I don't know what it would normally be named or if it exists in post-release at all, but I don't know. It just caught me completely off guard to see a design I haven't seen in this game, period. Now, so far, going through Vara's dialogue and some of the stuff here, it seems like pretty much everything is identical so far. But unfortunately, because 1.0 doesn't have access to online play, I will not be able to really check this questline further. So far, it seems the same, but given the last item we just discussed with the Red Insignia, I would like to see if there's any different here as well. Maybe I can somehow figure something out to get this questline going, but the offline questline that you can do to circumvent doing online play was added only later on in the Elden Ring release, like 106 or 107. So at least right now, as far as I can think, it's not really possible to do this questline. In the temple quarters, the Ice Friend hatchet is not where it normally is. The chest isn't even present where it normally is. If you've been watching from the beginning of the series, do you know this is kind of the inception of this concept of me wanting to look through the whole game, see what's different? So we're finally back here, brought it kind of full circle. And, you know, I wouldn't say we're roughly 1/3, 1/4 into the game still. So we got a ways to go. When encountering the dragon that's guarding the key to Raya Lucaria, the dragon is already awake. It's not asleep as normally is, and it's just roaming around in a cycle. Maybe this means you can stealth by it and get the key without being noticed. While fighting, I did notice that this little flame effect is different, but not by much. It's just, you know, some changes in particle effects that I assume are polished later on. When arriving to the Tetsu Rise, I noticed that it is once again just called the Tetsu's Glintstone Rise, like the previous ones. The Raya Lucaria Crystal Tunnel is called the Glintstone Tunnel, just like one of the previous ones we had. And in here, the crystal knife is not in the chest it's supposed to be as well. Another empty chest that just has no item in it. Jumping over to the village of the Albinarics, the larval tier that's in this area is not there, and neither is the ivory sickle. And in a slightly different area, the crystal sword is not there either. So there goes two crystal weapons that are not where they're supposed to be. Albus is hiding in a different structure here. Normally hides in a little pot thingy, but in this one he hides in a statue kind of thing. I don't believe this is randomized in current patch. Whether it is 1.0, I guess it's another question. But it's definitely a different structure. And there doesn't seem to be as much light surrounding it to make it a little more obvious that there's someone hiding here. So this one's interesting. The Omen Killer boss is called just Forsaken. Just Forsaken, that's all it's called. And it is also playing the dragon song. My god. The changes here are so wild that the game just crashed on me as well. I just couldn't believe it. When coming back with one of the half talismans for Haligtree, Ensha still invades you, but guess what song it's playing? It's playing the dragon song again. I swear the game's just taunting me at this point, but normally it's supposed to play the Formidable Foe 2. That's the name of the track. Which is actually the same song that's playing for the Omen Killer normally, when it's not switched from the dragon song. Ensha also doesn't drop its armor in its normal location after you kill him. While we're here, I did notice that Gideon doesn't have any dialogue for the current shard bearers you're supposed to be focused on, like Godric, Renala, Radon, and such. And it only talks about the ones that are unknown that you should normally not be able to access at all so far. So he's vastly less helpful, I would say, because, you know, some of the tips it gives you for the other shard bearers is pretty nice. So the converted tower is actually named the Proselytes Tower, if I'm saying that right. And that word is supposed to mean a person who has converted from one opinion, religion, or party to another. So I guess just like the previous one we discussed in another part, these changes of names are similar enough and it makes sense. And it made me realize that it's probably simply a matter of the translation from Japanese to English. Perhaps they noticed that this word, even though it's accurate, is just a little weird and complicated. So this switched to something similar in context. The Stormhawk Dean is simply called Stormhawk Ashes. Dean being, I think it's supposed to be given name of this animal, and it's just more a generic name for this. The ornamental straight swords don't have the cool attack once you've buffed the weapon and do an R2. They have like a consecutive attack you can do, or maybe even a follow-up they can constantly chain. It simply has the buff and the normal attacks after with a little more damage, I assume. Which is a little lame. It kind of makes them not that unique. In the Road's End Catacombs, this chest right here is empty and it normally has the Raya Lucaria Soldier Ashes. So as I'm sure most of you know, around these red aggro jellyfish, you would find a jellyfish shield normally, but unfortunately it's not here in 1.0. So another popular shield as well that is just not here in 1.0. Could be elsewhere, we'll have to see. In the King's Realm Ruins, the Royal Revenant boss you find under it is called Royal Spectre instead of Revenant. So if we go through the east, supposedly, gate to Raya Lucaria, you can see that the sealed gate has like a red mist around it. It seems maybe like a glitch. The other part of the gates that has this seal doesn't have that. Another tower here that was changed. The converted French tower is called the Proselyte's Spire instead. And in here, the Cannon of Hayama is called the Glintstone Shot. And the Gavel of Hayama is called the Glintstone Gavel. So they just want to have a name character, I suppose, for these two. Now this one's very interesting. For the Vike Invasion, his attacks don't cause frenzy. So his spear hitting you doesn't cause frenzy. Even the weapon art attack doesn't have frenzy buildup. But if you can see some of the other stuff, it seems to be essentially the boss fight later on in the game with the red lightning spells. So that's what it's using all around. It's even using the Vike's lightning buff on the weapon, which is cheating because you're not supposed to be able to buff this weapon, just like in the boss fight. Although in that one, you even changed the Ashes of War, just nuts. But anyway, yeah, it seems like this is more or less the boss fight later on, which is going to be interesting to see if they maybe have the same fight as a boss later, or maybe they flipped both of them. It also has 2 flask seals, so even harder, I suppose, a little bit. The Finger Maiden that he's defending does have the Finger Maiden set here at all. I couldn't find it anywhere else either, so it might just not be in the game. This chest right here normally has the Great Mace, but it is not here, so another chest is just empty. In the ruin-strewn precipice, north of the ravine, the little exploding bug that's normally here that drops a somber stone is just not there, period. They really spent that dragon song as a filler, didn't they? It seems like, Jesus. And also, they call this boss Magma Worm Makal, not Makar. Near the Caria Manor, you can get the Hoarfrost Stomp, but it's called the Hoarfrost Step in this one, so close enough, I suppose. And I did test it out a little bit since the Ice Rain Hatchet being gone is a big change, as it was a speeder weapon early on. So I did check it to see if it was just as strong. And it seems like, yeah, it's pretty strong in the Stomp Ash of War, and not just the weapon as well. It seems viable and stuff as well. In the actual Caria Manor, a little deeper in, the Arumi doesn't exist, the whip sword thingy. The Sword of Night and Flame does exist, but I did notice that the requirements for it is much, much lower than they are in post-release. Which, given how strong it was on release at least, I guess it makes sense. Though it doesn't seem maybe nearly as strong as it as it was. I did test it a little bit, at least the beam. I'm not sure about that though. I need to test it more. Getting to the boss itself, instead of being named Royal Knight Loretta, it's called Guard Loretta, and it is playing the Grave Warden song instead of the Earth Tree Knight song. Also noticed that she didn't use the bow spell, or at least I tried to bait it out of her, she just didn't seem to do it. So that was definitely strange. Maybe it was just unlucky for my part, who knows, but she didn't use it at all. Here's what Pydia's stock looks like if you are curious. Definitely quite different from post-release. Now we're in the Three Sisters area. I did notice that the Onyx Lord is called Alabaster's Lord in this one, and the name is sort of interchangeable as it is. The Chilling Mist spell you get from this scarab is called Imbue Frost, and it's actually found in a different location as well, slightly. It's a little bit more close to Rena's rice instead of Rani's rice. Now speaking of Rani, so far seems like everything in the questline is the same, all the dialogue seem the same. The rise is called Glintstone Rise as well, as per usual for 1.0. I do want to do the rivers next, so Shifa River and all that will be next. Most likely most of Nokron and stuff now that I have this questline going. And I will kill Radahn finally for that part. And Celavis Rise, you can't find the Blades mask, like it's just not there. So that's another unfortunate one. This merchant in the Raya Lucaria stock is different of course, but this one has a turtle shield. So this is where the turtle shield is as opposed to where you normally find it. Someone did warn me that you find it in a merchant, so they're correct. Thank you for that notice. So not all Loved shields are gone. The Marionette Soldier Ashes aren't where they're supposed to be, they just don't exist. And neither do the enemies that are surrounding it. And similar with the Avian Ashes, they're not where they're supposed to be in Raya Lucaria itself. Similarly, the Carian Knight set is not there at all either, which is, I know, a pretty sick knight fashion, I would say so myself. The Spectral Lance is in a totally different spot than it normally is. Almost thought it wasn't there, but I did find it in a different spot. And similarly, the Olivinus Glintstone Crown is not where it's supposed to be, but it is at a spot later on. We'll get to that soon. Now this round of items is definitely interesting. The spare glintstone key that you find that can give to Tops or whatever his name is where the comet normally is. But then if you continue just a little bit further, you find the comet where the Graves School talisman normally is. So there's just a couple of item flip going on right here. And it's not even the end of it. There's still a little bit more to this, just a little bit later. The Red Wolf of Radagon does have different music as well, which is sad because the Red Wolf Radagon song is really good. But it's playing Formidable Foe 2 again. Or rather, I should say it's playing it now, even though it should have been playing before with some of the other bosses. So the song did exist, weirdly, but it wasn't used for some of the bosses supposed to yet. Also never noticed the Red Wolf doing the 3 stationary magic spells attack, only the 1. I don't know if you just can't do it or I just got unlucky, but I didn't notice it. The Full Moon crossbow is not where it's supposed to be here in this tower, but this is where you find the Glintstone Crown I mentioned earlier that it was in a different spot, the Olivinus one. And now to finish some of the switching items from earlier, the Graven School Talisman is here instead of where the Assure Glintstone Staff is, behind that one page enemy that's really strong with the 3 bolt attacks at the same time. The Carian Knight you fight here still drops its Knight Shield, but it already has Carian Retaliation, which is very handy. It's a very powerful Ash of War, and it doesn't seem as powerful as it was in like 103 patch, which I think it did get kind of accidentally buffed or something, but having it already on is pretty neat. It's kind of fitting. It's just the one you would figure it's already on, although you still can't get it normally as well. Now for Renala, the fight and stuff seem pretty much identical. The only thing I noticed that's different is that there's very subtle changes to the dialogue and subtitles for the cutscene.
Hush, fair maid. Hush, little Culver. Ah, my beloved.
So it seems like one of them was an error and one of them just changed dialogue, but you know, close enough I suppose. And when you're about to get rebirthed from Renala, on the little box prompt it says to give an Amber Shard instead of a Larval Tear, but it still works via Larva Tear. I did try it and see if it cost me a thing, and it worked, and it let me in the menu. So it seems like it's just a mislabeling of the thing. I think the Amber Shard's a different item in the game, but it's not really what's required, just the tears. And now finally for the round of items that were changed that were maybe a little bit more negligible but still thought were noteworthy. In 1.0, the Confessor set is called the Intelliger set, The Troll Knight sword is called the Giant's Enchanted Sword. The Juvenile Scholar set is called the Neophytes set. The Lazuli robe is called the Yeoman's robe. For Ashes of War, the Sword Dance is called the High Slash combo. Beast's Roar is called Screeching Cry. And the Barbaric's Roar is called the Brave War Cry. For the spells and miracles, Glintstone Ice Crag is called Glintstone Ice Shard in 1.0. Terra Magical is called Guidance of the Academy. Wild difference there. The Magic Glint Blade is called Wolf's Sword Trap. I assume that is referring to Red Wolf of Radagon, interestingly, so that's interesting. Blessing Boon is called Beseech Aid. Frenzied Burst is called Frenzied Dart. Howl of Shabiri is called Frenzied Roar. Enchained Death Rancor is called Ancient Spirits of Death. Bestial Vitality is called Bestial Vigor. And some random item changes that I saw. Sylvis's Potion is called Sylvis's Draught. The Fire Monk Prayer Book is called Giant Flames Prayer Book, or at least it's switched around, I should say. And the Frenzied Cookbook, it's called Shabiri's Cookbook. Phew, and that is all for the video. My god, that was a long one, that's for sure. If you missed my community post, I mentioned in it recently that I would like to kind of speed up the process for these just to prep before the DLC is released. You know, we don't have a release date as of release of this video, but I do feel like it's gonna be at least announced soon. A lot of people expect the Game Awards, but I expect maybe in the next couple months at least. Although the release should be later on, I feel like at least a year after the game's release makes sense, but let's see. Either way though, I would like to get this done soon, so I might start putting out some 1.0 videos a little bit faster than I was. And even though I finish early, I can at least get some other projects done that I would like to do before DLC comes out. As I mentioned, I would like to do the river next, the Shifa River, and then I want to say also Nokron and all that goes with that. Maybe if it flows well, I can also go to some of the other segments of the other ground that fit together with this, but we'll see. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. With the guide, as I said earlier, this process might be a little more streamlined, but it will take some time as well to just search through the guide and stuff, make sure everything's good, checking what the map items are if I don't know what that item is already. The process is going to be a lot more complicated if anything, but hopefully it will make it a little bit easier as well. But more than ever, if you enjoy this content, the monetary support would help a lot. So if you want to become a member, do consider doing so as we try to finish the series for the next couple months before the DLC comes out. But even if not, if you enjoy this content, just consider subscribing. And if you missed some of the parts so far, we've done one for Limgrave, Weeping Peninsula, and Caelid already. Hope to see you again for another one of these parts. I will see you all then. Bye bye.